Now, before I say my usual shtick, our 4-week course on interpersonal conflict run towards the hard shit, the life you want is on the other side of conflict, starts in less than a week, okay? June 4th is when we begin, and I will be co-teaching this course with Monica, who you have met during our Yapcast episodes. And the 4 sessions are going to go like this: looking at yourself and conflict, looking at the person you're in conflict with, looking at what happens in the fire of an actual conflict conversation, and then, this is the most important part, what happens in the aftermath of conflict. So sign up ends for this 4-week course on the morning of June 4th, so be sure to snag your spot before then. And anyway, let's do our normal introduction. Welcome to Grace Pilled, where we explore the infinitude of God by talking about God within God, aka interviews with people spanning the vastness of the spiritual path. My name is Hanna, and I will be your guide. I've been studying and practicing in a classical Shakta tantric tradition since 2015, and I just love exploring all of the ways that God wakes up within our own dream through the guise of individual people on this earth. For the last few years, I've been working professionally as a guide for others, doing one-on-one work and also giving talks and courses. If you ever want to chat with me, you can book a call with me on my website or join my Patreon, which is my massive library of talks that I've given over the years. But enough about me. Let's talk about Bob. So today, we get to experience Bob Peck, okay? Author, award-winning filmmaker, mystic, and, dare I say, spiritual comedian. Fascinated by spirituality and philosophy from a young age, Bob has approached the spiritual path like a true connoisseur of the vast wisdom smorgasbord that is world religion. His deep knowledge of many traditions makes him a grounded and insightful guide, as he has demonstrated to us in his awesome book called Original Sin is a Lie. You should check that out. So with a warm heart, Bob invites us to explore the territory beyond dogma and to uncover our own true selves. And he's very funny, so we have lots of laughs during this conversation. And he's a Ramakrishna enjoyer, so Jai Guru Dev, I'm sure you're going to enjoy this one. Thank you. Okay, Bob, here we are.
Hey, Hanna, glad to be here.
Welcome. So I am very excited to talk to you because approximately 10 million people sent me your reel that you did of being a cop. And everybody was like, I want you to give your take on this. I never gave anyone the satisfaction of that, actually. But I remember watching it and thinking to myself, like, that is so ballsy.
Thank you.
And so I respect
comments are that it's. I thought that I was misunderstood before, and then that video came out. But it's okay. It's funny. So I mean, it came up because I have a very large mustache, and I love Reno 911, and it was Halloween, and I was like, I'm gonna be a cop. And so I went to my friend's art gallery. They had a Dia de los Muertos party, but I thought it was a Halloween party. And so everybody was dressed up in like skull makeup, but I just came in as a state trooper. And it was kind of like, that was the bit that night, that like, I was like the cop. I was like arresting people. It was really fun. Actually, I was drinking and I was like telling the DJ to turn it down. I was like, hey buddy, we keep getting calls, and the guy's like, okay, man, and one of the jokes that came up was Blue Lives Matter, Krishna, Kali.
Oh, that's how it started?
Yeah, just at the party. I was like, hey buddy, Blue Lives Matter, Sri Krishna, Kali Ma. And I was like, this is gotta be a video. But then it was like, but how can I add to like this mystical angle of it, of like every being is a mask of the one. That's my, deep belief, and that's the deep kind of spiritual lesson of the world mystics. And so it was kind of like, it's messy, but it's like a funny hook with me as a state trooper with the Blue Lives Matter joke. But it was like, but also we make mistakes. I don't know. I'm very like not crazy. about the institution of police. I
Totally.
tried to clarify that because
Yeah, don't you work in prisons or something? Or are you like,
I do volunteer and we teach meditation.
I see.
I teach meditation with the Buddhists
Uh-huh.
in Central Texas. But yeah, no, I'm pretty left. Campaign for Sanders, and so I'm not afraid to point out the institution, which is why it's weird to get like people be like, this is pretty cool, but ACAB still, I
Yeah,
mean,
totally.
but I
Ooh, it gets
people who
people a
love my
little, it
stuff
gets people
got
a
it.
little jumbled.
It does.
I get a
Even
lot of
strangely
people
when
jumbled.
you're really progressive, or like, whoa, man, kind of like, what was that? I was like, no, I don't know. That's
Well, I
that's
respect
part of the
it.
vulnerability of doing all this stuff, right? So,
Yeah,
thank
totally.
you.
I respect it. So, Bob, to start off, can you share like a recent win you've experienced, like something big or small that you're proud of or you feel really good about?
Really fun question. I think it really has to do with any time that I'm like questioning my creative path of writing, making videos, making like megaphoning things on the internet for some strange reason. Like pretty soon after that, I'll get someone being like, this really helped me, like either in the comments or the messages, and it's like, okay, like I'm sure you have too. Like I've got a couple people that were like, I was in a really dark place and I read your book, and I'm like, okay, then I'll write 100 books. Like
Oh.
I'll make 1,000 TikToks if people are like receiving this and resonating with this, even if it's just a handful. Um, so yeah, I've got some nice messages recently. I think I'm kind of always like questioning what I'm doing and what the next direction is and what the point of it is. And like a big part of all of us, I think, especially the spiritual group, is like, when are we just going to put our phones in the river and like go sit under a tree for 10 years, but it's like, but we're not right now.
Yeah.
We're in the chaos. And so here's a Thich Nhat Hanh quote.
Yeah, how do we do the
And
chaos?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Here's a cop meditating.
And then you have to meditate on all of the frustration and confusion that elicits inside
Right.
of you.
Right.
It's a wonderful
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah. I'll share this too. I'm curious where you're at. Actually, I know where you're at because you've been making some great stuff about like not apologizing for who you are and things like that.
Mm.
A friend of mine, a couple of years ago, I started connecting with other TikTok people. I kind of come from TikTok, and that was like where I was kind of felt courageous enough to just throw it into the randomness of the algo, whereas Instagram is more kind of family and friendsy
Yes.
coworkers.
Time.
It's different. So TikTok, I was like, oh yeah, I'll just blast it out there. And so I met, I think, more people I didn't know earlier, and a couple of really great creator types on there. One guy said, he said it's like a mascot. His name's Daniel Tyack, by the way. He's a great like philosopher in San Diego. He said it's like a mascot. When you see that the person identity, the persona, is a mascot and it's not you,
Hmm.
then you're free. Then you're
Hmm.
free to use it. You're free to. I like the mascot because I like to be a cheerleader. It's like you're just on the sidelines of the game. You're just cheerleading, but it's not who you really are. So if people don't understand Bob Peck, that's fine.
Right.
It's okay. It's for people who understand that's
Yes.
the personhood. And ultimately,
Oh.
I'm behind it. You're behind yours.
Hmm.
This one's going to go away. It's going to be bones and dust at some
Hmm.
point, and so it's not that big a deal.
Right. So if somebody misunderstands the Bob Peck costume,
Yes.
it's
Yeah,
less of a
exactly.
big deal because you recognize that it's actually not that big of a deal in the first place.
Yeah, I'm going to do my best. I'll try to be clear and I'll try to be useful and supportive, but it's like, I think when you first, especially when you first get started and we see like really angry. So, I mean, I still get like, people that
Totally.
are just like, this guy's crazy and sucks and, blah, blah, blah. And we're just like,
It's fun for
sending peace,
them.
brother.
It's
Yeah.
fun for them to have something they hate?
Yeah, or they're miserable. Yeah,
They're miserable.
I think they're miserable. Yeah, I think they're just like they're working like at a Dairy Queen in Kansas City, and it's like I don't sorry Dairy Queen employees in Kansas City. but you know what I mean? Like they live in a 6,000 person town and they're just dopamine deprived. They have no prospects and, you know, and so they're going to take it out on everybody and everything. And I send them peace and I hope that they, fill those holes in their hearts. But we're not going to correct them in the
No.
replies. It's like, no, this is who that person is right now. So you just got to keep on.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually got oh wait, well, so speaking of social media and throwing your mascot out into the abyss,
Yeah.
I could feel what you mean about how TikTok is a different experience because it feels more like a roulette. It's like people that that have no clue who I am are going to be the most people that are watching it. It's so different from Instagram. Instagram, you can be more personal with the people that are there because you can more reliably
It's
talk to the
them
same people.
earlier. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like a totally
They're
different
the same
energy.
people. Yeah.
And then I'm starting to post on YouTube now. And then YouTube also weirdly will bring you completely random people that know nothing about you. And I recently posted a video about why I charge money for spiritual services, which is like me saying something like very controversial.
Yeah. How
So,
dare you?
how dare you? Talk about the thing that everybody's thinking. And all these people were commenting on it that were just kind of like, well, if you even need to justify the fact that you want to charge money, like that says so much about you. And I had this urge to kind of like correct them, but then I didn't. I was just like, it was so much fun for me to justify it. And I mean that seriously. I wasn't even trying to be like a little shit about it, but like it's like it's fun for me to do it.
Let me just ABCD this.
Yeah, totally. Totally. So just setting an example for how we respond to these things is also important, I think.
I noticed recently too that I'll get like kind of crazy Christians. We talked about this before. Like I'll get people saying like, "Oh well, Matthew 15." Da, da, da. Well, I'm a student of Bible scholarship. I'm familiar with that verse. Blah blah blah. And so I'm not as concerned about kind of like this sounds judgmental, but like lower IQ condemnations, whatever. But what does get me is like a really smart comment, like kind of like a really like intellectual, sassy comment about like, well, but the Gnostics actually mean if only you knew, da da da. And then but then it's like, okay, like why did that get me more?
Why does something hook you more?
Yeah, totally. Like I went on a Michael Phillips podcast on Third Eye Drops, who's great, who I'm sure people who know you might know him if you don't, but Third Eye Drops, and we did a Gnostic episode. And like most of the comments were like, this is so cool. And then like a couple of them were like, you should get an expert, on there. And it was just like, oh,
I felt that.
man. Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
I was like, I'm just doing my best, man. I've read some books, buddy.
Oh.
Well, my bachelor's degree, it's like,
yeah. What do you think it means to be an expert?
Yeah, that's a great response to that. Yeah, I don't know. What I'm trying to do with my work, I've mentioned this in my podcast intro. It was like, there's a lot of mystics online who I love, and shout out to all of us, but there's a few on TikTok, Instagram that could use, a textbook or two, like a little bit
little scriptural basis or something.
Little scriptural basis with some of these star seeds. God love them. But they're doing it from the heart.
Channeled information.
Yeah, they're doing it from the intuitive. So I get that. I respect that. But also, there's also some scholars now, which is cool, that they're making content. But some of those guys are a little dry. They could use a mushroom.
I totally.
They get a little too caught up in the textual kind of likelihood and the historicity and the stuff. And it's like, that stuff's cool too. But, kind of what I'm trying to do, like I said, a bachelor of comparative religion, useless degree from UT. And it's not a master's, but anyway, my little kind of undergrad is like just enough scholarship, but just enough kind of mystical experience.
Just enough background to value scholarship and to see the value of that, but also you're not like wedded to it.
I'm not tied to it. And so I kind of like, I'll call out the scholars for needing to loosen up, but I'll call out
Yes.
the mystics for saying, well, maybe you should, there's
Yes.
this guy Thomas Merton, or there's
Oh yeah. Oh,
or
totally.
you should really probably read Zhuangzi before you talk about Taoism or whatever it is.
Totally. Yeah. Oh, totally. I can relate with a lot of
How
what you're
can I
saying.
judge everyone, basically?
Oh no. I can relate with you a lot because I also have an undergrad degree in religion.
I think I saw that. Okay, great.
Yeah, and so I can relate with
So
that. Yeah, I have no interest in going beyond that unless somebody was paying me to do it, frankly.
yeah, yeah, it would have been fun if money just wasn't necessary at all
Exactly.
to do it. But yeah. But I have to make a living out here.
Totally. Real. Yeah, but I think because of my background with actually reading like religious studies texts, not just the original material, but also like the analysis, their hermeneutic,
Yeah,
like all these sorts of things, because I have experience with that, I feel like it's given me a level of discernment as I wade through the mystics that you're talking about. You can
yeah,
kind of tell if somebody like doesn't see the value in that, but I don't believe that that's like the best way either. But it's good to have that in your tool belt as far as like discernment.
totally, totally agree. Yeah, sometimes what I'll see is like people who haven't read those books, they'll have an experience. They'll have like either through meditation or psychs or something else, and then they'll kind of stumble upon the reading later, and it'll validate
Yes.
experience. It's like, oh, that's really cool. For me, it was kind of the opposite. Like
Mm,
I kind of wormed all this stuff, and then
mm,
over the years, it's just like, yep, huh, okay,
mm,
you know,
mm.
falling
Okay,
into place.
well, so for anyone who's listening, let's start with our first real question here.
Okay.
How would you describe yourself spiritually? Like, what resonates the most? How do you look at yourself? What's your mascot doing?
There's no labels, man. I like mystic. I What's funny about that word is like everybody thinks it means magic. So I'm trying to help people understand that that's not it. It doesn't necessarily mean magic, but it means internal, non-institutional path to the divine, right? The world mystics are present in every religion. They're esoteric as opposed to the exoteric. So this is what you'll learn in university or Wikipedia
Oh,
is every religion has the exoteric and the esoteric. And so the esoterics are the Sufis of Islam and the Gnostics of Christianity and some of the contemplatives in the monasteries. The Kabbalists in Judaism. Zen is sometimes considered the mystical version of Buddhism. I like all the mystics. And, I think from going a little bit deeper with some of the labels is I've become closer and closer to non-duality.
mm,
I think that it there's a reason that most of these mystics in those schools kind of sound similar. They kind of come to this non-dual type of thinking and awareness. And so yeah, I think kind of non-dual mystic, open-minded, all paths are true kind of guy.
yeah, I definitely would describe my religious tradition as non-dual as well, and so I throw that word around a lot, but I'm curious, like, how would you explain non-duality to somebody?
Yeah, it's impossible. Um, so let's start there. Etymologically it means not two, right?
Mm,
So there's only one. Um, Really, the pervading image is a dream. That this world of two-ness is illusory or unreal, and I think there's some challenges in English to what that means. Um,
mhm.
Hey, you got to come over here. Here, can I just show you my Pomeranian? That'll be a great segue.
Oh,
You need to stop making noise.
oh,
Okay, come sit down. I'll let you out in a minute. Um, you're getting the toad taps. Okay, anyway, non-duality. Yeah, there's different perspectives of it in the Vedas and the Advaita Vedanta has become more and more popular over the years, which is awesome. I see a lot of like Sri Ramana Maharshi and Sri Nisargadatta quotes about kind of the futility of this world. Um,
mm,
but that doesn't necessarily mean world denialism. It doesn't mean apathy. It but it does mean don't get caught in it. It's a subtle distinction, as you well know. We're can just contextualizing here, but I think the Buddhists look at non-duality more about with time. They look at it with kind of the fact that things are changing constantly.
Yeah.
It shows its futility and its illusory nature. But anyway, Rumi talks about the dream. Hafiz, all these guys talk about the dream-like nature of this world, and so the non-dualists are just saying, okay, so if this is a dream, then where are we? What should we really be striving for? And that is the one. That's the eternity. That's the ineffable. That's the
So to strive for anything other than that is the futile thing, but that doesn't mean that our existence is futile.
Yeah, I think it just means don't get caught in the worldly day-to-day fly trap of samsara. It's so sticky. It's so you want to get upset. You want to get the pleasure and the pain and we're just going through lifetimes of just this crazy dance. And it seems like what the general, if I threw all of the PDFs into ChatGPT of all the world mystics, what would summarize this? Like, I think it would really have to be something like, what does Jesus say? Be in the world, but not of it. You're in the world, but you're just, I think Hafiz has the poem, The Guest House. It's like, it's just a guest house. It's an Airbnb, it's like you're leaving soon and you're not from here. But we sure do seem to think that we're, we owe so much to this. Yeah.
It's very easy to think.
And and sometimes I can hear the ego, sometimes the activist community or, there's a lot of people that, well, hey man, there's real problems here, and I'd say all the mystics are completely motivated by love. I think one of the big synonyms for God is love. So if you're tuned into the one, you're going to have that love and compassion that's going to radiate. There's an inner peace that manifests externally. And so, kind of to the activists or the people who are upset about injustice, it's like, hey, I would never advocate apathy or indifference. And at the same time, let's really investigate those kinds of ideas around futility and around cyclical nature of societal change. And it's a tough question, but non-duality is a really beautiful philosophy and system that is pervasive in the world mystic traditions, and it's a life study.
Yeah, it's interesting what you shared about like the activist mentality, because I've experienced that as well, where if you start talking about ideas of like non-attachment, people are like, well, if you're going to be non-attached, that's so easy for you to say. But it's ironic to me because it's like, if you actually practice these spiritual principles, you'll be an even better activist.
Right.
Because there's like 20 things that you're unaware of how attached you are to that are actually getting in the way of your pure discernment of how to actually handle a situation. So I'm like, this is what everyone should be doing. But I actually think part of it is that people, and I'm not judging anyone because I didn't think this either until I encountered my spiritual tradition, but it's like people can't conceptualize of the complex level of awareness that's possible where you can be detached and take action at the same time. People, they've just never encountered that before.
Totally. Yeah,
but they have a dualistic way of looking. Sorry,
it's a level.
That's it.
No, you're great. Well, very well put. I think that's going up the carousel a little bit. There's a really great Ram Dass Thich Nhat Hanh interview on YouTube from the early '90s that I shared a clip of a few months ago, where Ram Dass says, a lot of the people who are in the activist community tell me that they consider their anger to be valuable, and they're worried that their spiritual practices are eroding some of that anger, and that will make them less effective. Like, what do you have to say to that? And Thich Nhat Hanh, who was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize by Martin Luther King, for speaking out against the Vietnam War in his youth, and who taught mindfulness meditation to, tens of millions of people. He says, anger is a form of energy and you can use it. The issue with anger is that it you were not as lucid. It is going to cloud your, like you said, your awareness, your discernment. And so what's more useful in his experience is to transmute that anger into compassion or generosity or like equanimity. You can use that anger as an inciting initial energy, but the real art of the spiritual practice and kind of the world, I think it can generate real efficiency in the world, that anger to compassion, to then see through some of those challenges in new ways.
Totally. Yeah. And like, it's almost kind of like sometimes the spiritual path can turn into this game where you don't even realize that prior to engaging with certain ideas that you were playing the game only like on one mode. And then all of a sudden there's like like a bunch of other modes that you can start playing the game at. And so if somebody doesn't have the capacity yet to be able to witness their own mind, which is like a new mode, like nobody realizes that you're allowed to just like look at your mind until someone tells you. It's like you would never do it on your own. And so then you like Ram Dass tells you to like look at your mind and you're like, what, that's an option? And then when you start looking at your mind, then you can start looking at your anger. And then you can start being like, oh, okay, like what's actually going on here? And without that like mode that you activate, that anger will never be able to be transmuted. But you almost have to have that ability to step back from what's going on to master the thing that's happening in your mind. And people just don't know how to do that because it takes some practice and guidance around that. So anywho, sorry, that's my turn.
No. Oh, don't apologize. That was really well stated. I think even that samsara, or Maya, these terms about describing this world of change and temporalness is very good at, it's worthy adversary in terms of, preventing you from coming to that clarity. And it's only getting more loud and more distracting. It's almost as if it's kind of in this kind of death rattle, if you will, or, it's like it's falling off the cliff, but it's hanging on and it's getting more intense. It's like it's ramping up the noise, as we're starting to understand it more fully. It's a kind of a linear, it's like, oh, we almost got it, but it's like, okay, well then we're gonna have the craziest month in America and it costs 250 years, whatever. It's like everybody's really starting to come together and see the world is united in beauty and reverence for all people and plants and animals. And it's like, okay, like let's descend into fascism then, it's like ramp that one up. So it's just that's that's how it works. It's non-duality, baby.
Right. And I think one time, did you message me or comment about Kali Yuga?
Yes, I
Big
think we've
Kali
talked
Yuga
about
themes. I
Kali
think
Yuga.
we've talked
Yeah,
about Kali Yuga. Big Kali Yuga themes.
totally. Yeah, I love that the Vedas are so cyclical. They see the
Totally.
cyclical nature of it. It's like it comes together, it falls apart, it comes together, it falls apart. This is how it works.
Yeah.
And Alan Watts has a great image. He goes, if you're caught in a loop, if you have a behavior pattern, you think you're getting it, but then you're back in it. He goes, don't beat yourself up because everything here is in orbit. When you zoom out, everything is just going around and around. The planets are the biggest things that we know of, and they're all just going in circles. So if you're going in circles, you're doing the exact equation of all the cosmos. So it's all right. It takes time to break that.
Oh yeah, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good mentality for self-acceptance and not living in such thinking there's something horribly wrong with you because you have a cyclical nature like the fucking ocean.
I just thought I'd beat this. No, you're just at low tide again. The tide comes lower every day.
Oh my god. Wait, but
It's higher.
what's another thing though is like even with Kali Yuga, like if anyone's listening, there's like 4 major yugas where there's different kind of like struggles or themes that are happening. And whoever you listen to, it says it either lasts 100 million years or it lasts 10,000 years, or, we don't, time is fake anyway.
480K or whatever. Yeah.
So, but you could look at Kali Yuga and you could say like, oh man, like we're in like the worst one. Like this is like, we're really losing. Like we're in the shittiest one. But there's actually a trickster nature to all the different yugas, because Kali Yuga is technically the worst one, but it's the easiest one to advance in spiritually.
Right.
And then the one that comes after Kali Yuga, someone might correct me on this, I think is like the good one. But then in that yuga, it's harder to advance spiritually.
Yeah.
So there's like a trickster.
It's
like a trickster thing in it.
Yeah, being the Yogananda nerd that I am, I've read a lot of his stuff, and he was a devotee of his lineage of Kriya Yoga. His direct master was Sri Yukteswar, and Sri Yukteswar Giri was a very sophisticated Jnana yogi and Vedic astrologer, and he wrote one book. It's pretty short, called The Holy Science, which is the English translation for Hinduism. Which I'm sure it's called Sanatana Dharma is what the Indians call it. But that means holy science, and that's what his book is called in English. So he wrote a book called The Holy Science, really short. I think SRF is probably reprinting it. But anyway, one thing Sri Yukteswar says is, he says, we're actually not in the Kali Yuga. Most Hindu swamis and gurus say we're in the Kali. He makes a case for that we were in the Dwapara Yuga. So he explains it more. If anyone's interested in kind of that's what I'm into, is like the Yuga controversy among esoteric gurus. Which Kali Yuga are we in, or Dwapara Yuga? No one understands me. But anyway, yeah, if you want more information, his stuff is great. And Yogananda is really his life story is very famous. Autobiography of a Yogi. Is a really terrific book for anyone as an intro to Hinduism and kind of Indian philosophy of the last 100 years or so. But yeah. So that's my little factoid.
Well, okay, so you're a mystic, a non-dualist, a non-duality enjoyer.
Yeah,
you're at
exactly.
stake. And your way of experiencing mysticism, or how you explain it, is kind of like this non-institutional path. I understand mysticism as well as the path of direct experience. And so you're really just trying to go straight to the heart of the experience of God, and there's almost, it's like there's a spirit of fast tracking it.
Totally.
Does that check out with you?
Yeah, Rumi says, he says 1,000 great things, but he says, I looked for the divine in temples, churches, and mosques, and I found the divine in my heart. That's really kind of the mystic's mantra. Yeah.
Have you ever heard that one of the translations for Sufi is bench person? There's like two. I think the main one is Sufi translates to a rough wool fabric.
Yeah, tasawwuf, I think, means wool, or Tamil Suf means wool.
But it's like uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable wool that like ascetics would wear. I don't remember exactly why that is, but there's another translation that the Sufis were called the bench people because they would hang out outside of the mosques and make fun of everybody walking into the mosque.
Hey, that's fantastic.
Which I love.
Yeah, they're all really great. I'm working on. I just did a Substack on a few reasons why I love the mystics, and Kabir, his whole thing is just making fun of religious people, and like centuries later, he's revered as a saint in two religions, Hindus and Muslims during the time of his life and after. We're like, Kabir is ours. Like, now he's revered in both. But if you read his stuff, he's just kind of making fun of them and their hypocrisy. And it's hilarious. One thing that was great about him was he said Ram Allah. He called God Ram Allah.
Oh, Ram Allah.
Which is Rama and Allah. And
that's heretical.
The Hindus were like, God is Ram, not Allah. And the Muslims say, God is Allah, not Ram. He goes, no, God is Ram Allah. Yeah, he just made up that word to say, no, it's both, and you're both wrong. And I love their they're having a good time. You
Mhm.
know, it's a good kind of green check of like
Mhm.
these guys. Not only are they speaking from the heart, they're seeing through stubbornness and rigidity in religions that a lot of our generation is seeing. You know, it's like
Mhm.
all these people are leaving church
Oh, totally.
because of the hypocrisy and homophobia and corruption and abuse and
It's
so
also,
on.
like,
And it's like,
insulting to your intelligence sometimes. It's like, "You expect me to believe this?"
yeah, you just come and be good little, you know, and it's like everyone's kind of breaking that. A lot of people are, and it's it's the world mystics are great blueprints to
Yeah.
study and to see their lives because they all did that. They all kind of
Yeah.
left their prevailing thing. And also just kind of disclaimer. I mean, I realize probably not many people listening to you are, you know, at the Southern Baptist Convention, but anybody, if you are in an institution, you know, and this applies to like Hindu faith too, like institutions are fine. You know, some of them are great. Some of them are not great, but it's okay. Exoteric religion is okay. It's
Mhm.
community. It's, you know, I've met some really amazing pastors that, you
Mhm.
know, it's that they can be beautiful. So I try to not condemn just
Yeah,
religion.
there's something to, like,
Oh,
really devoting yourself to a path. And so,
totally.
like, you meet some pastors who have, like, completely devoted themselves, and it's like
Exactly.
they
They're
have something that you
transformed.
can get from that
Yes,
devotion, you know what I mean?
absolutely. Absolutely. My the guy who baptized me, actually, I baptized Episcopal um when I was like 10. Uh have not called myself Christian for 20 years, but he was great. He Father Pat Gahan, shout out. He just retired, but he was like the most incredible, open-minded, beautiful man. He said I filmed him in my one of my documentaries, and he said calling other messengers of God false is arrogant.
Hmm.
He goes, I know Jesus. Jesus Christ has transformed my life, but who am I to say God isn't speaking to other faith traditions and other cultural traditions? That's arrogance.
Hmm.
That's a Texas pastor who said that, you know? So it's like, I really want to be careful not to just all religion bad
Totally.
meme, which I do post, but you know, whatever.
Well, actually, I have an idea I want to run by you. So I'm also a mysticism enjoyer,
Yeah.
but there's when I'm a mysticism enjoyer, I'm enjoying the mystics of the 20th century and below, so to speak.
Okay.
And I'll most of them were went so super hard into one path at first,
Hmm.
and then they got the fruit of the knowledge of that one path, and then they started to dabble in other stuff because they got what they needed from that one thing. Does that kind of
Totally.
check out with
Yeah.
you?
Super interesting topic to me. Yeah. You know, I write about him in my book. I had an Apache teacher who passed away sadly about a year and a half ago, but lives on, you know, in eternity in our hearts. But he would say, don't get indigestion, you know, because I was like reading all the books and listening to all the things. And he was, you know,
Oh, don't get
don't
indigestion.
don't get indigestion. You know, it's like that's a great because if you when you go to the buffet line and you get spaghetti and you know hamburger and tacos and oh they have Chinese food and you know and so but Ramakrishna says don't dig many shallow wells, dig
Yes.
one deep one, right?
Yes.
Um and yet at the same time I think his life he is exactly what you're talking about, which is
Exactly.
Kali Ma
Yes.
awakening.
Hmm.
But then his sadhana was he was taught by an Advaita, uh, Trilanga Swami, I believe. He was taught by the Bhairavi, who was a
Mm.
Bhakta. He was taught by, uh, he joined Islam for a brief period. He joined Christianity for a brief
Mm.
period. His whole point is
Yes.
that was his the incarnation, right? The avatar. You know, that's the awakened being's path is whatever their dharmic thing is. But he did exactly what you're talking about. He kind of broke the veil with Kali and then did a variety of them and said, this is true, this is true, this is true. But I think you know, he's definitely a child of Kali, and
Mhm.
I think in retrospect. But yeah, there's an interest. I mean, the way I framed it, I think for people kind of maybe newer to this, is it seems like there's an exploratory period which is good.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
you should try different things and try different paths, and because you have it in you, you have it in your heart, you have it in your mind, you have, you are it, as Alan Watts says. So you are it. And so use that quality to find exactly what you need, to find what resonates with you the most fully. I'm not into contemplative Christianity. I really like Zen. I don't know about bhakti yoga, but man, these Zen masters, or whatever it is. But then you zero in on that. It
Yes.
seems like you have a period of kind of sampling and testing, and then highly recommend, and I don't know if it's 6 months or 6 years or 25. That's between you and spirit, because I do think sometimes it changes. But
Yeah.
there seems to be a required, you know, uh, psychology, just to kind of prove the point and pass it back, is psychology has proven, modern psychology and psychoanalysis has proven how different we all are. It's really been useful in understanding humanity, because we have all these different qualities and traumas and perceptive, extrovert, introvert, Myers-Briggs, archetypes, whatever. And that's beautiful. That means that all these paths are designed exactly for the diversity of the human.
Oh, totally. Oh, totally. Yeah, something that so what I want to say is we live in this time period right now that is such a gift,
Yeah.
where we have access to so many different paths. And this is actually one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, is because I'm saying, like, I really resonate with the mystics of the 20th century and like the 19th century.
Mhm.
But that was a different time period where
Totally.
whatever religion you grew up with, that was almost all that you had access to. That's painting a very broad stroke, but for the most part, like, Ramakrishna was born into the Hindu pantheon. There's obviously Islam as well as India, but like he grew up in that pantheon. The Baal Shem Tov, who started Hasidism and Judaism, like, that was the only thing happening in his town,
Right.
right? And so now we have like this opportunity to taste all of these different religions. And sometimes people come to me and they're frustrated. They're like, I don't know what they think it's a bad thing. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Go back 50, 70 years and your only option in America was Christianity.
Totally.
So we
That's so
actually have
true.
this incredible gift of having all of these opportunities to explore.
That's so useful. That's such a useful reframe, you know. Yeah, the library of the world and the world history that we have access to. But it is overwhelming, and I think it's
Definitely.
good to acknowledge that overwhelm and be like, no, you should be overwhelmed, because this is brand new. We had the internet on CDs, or like we had encyclopedia when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like we didn't even have Wikipedia then. Like I would have to like put in different discs like in the 90s.
Oh my God. Oh my
Like,
God.
so like we're really new to like
Yeah.
1,000 different Kabbalah workshops
Yes.
on Zoom. Like this
Oh
is
my God.
brand new. And it's okay if you don't know which one. So
Totally.
it's almost like, again, it's like the ramping up, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's getting noisier. So what are you gonna do? How about
Ah,
stillness? Maybe get still, probably,
totally.
to
Yeah.
counterbalance all the
Oh
options.
yeah. Wait, have you ever heard the story about Chogyam Trungpa? Who do you know Chogyam Trungpa?
Familiar, yeah, yeah. I don't
Who
know the
brought
story.
he brought Tibetan Buddhism to the West.
Yeah, yeah.
Basically, there's other figures, but he was a big one.
Naropa Institute
Narupa.
in
Yeah, that's where I
Yale.
went to college.
Oh, amazing. Great. You are such a Coloradan mystic. That's
It's
beautiful.
almost embarrassing. But so anywho, one of the stories with him is that he brought mindfulness meditation to the West. That's what we call it. It's actually called shamatha. And there's also another thing, I can't remember the pronunciation of it, but it's about like discernment. It's like the mindfulness and the discernment. And when he first started teaching Westerners, he got really annoyed because he would just tell them to sit quietly, because that's what he was told. And then the Westerners would sit quietly and they say, like, well, what should I do? And he was like, well, just sit quietly. Just don't do anything. And then he realized that we, for whatever reason, our psychology needs instruction in a way that he was not raised to even value. And so he came up with mindfulness meditation in response to the Western psychology. And so there's like steps. Like, oh, this is how you be mindful.
Funny.
Isn't
Yeah,
that interesting?
that's hilarious. Yeah, it makes sense. I finally read Life of Milarepa last year,
Oh, cool.
which I've talked about a little bit. I heard his name, and it's kind of, I think Ron Doss will like cite him every once in a while, and but man, I finally, somebody commented and said, "Gosh, you need to read Milarepa if you haven't." I finally did, and it was absolutely incredible, and I'm like such a fan. And but I feel like now I'd heard Shogun Trungpa stories. I'm familiar with the Dalai Lama. I've known about Tibetan Buddhism for so long, but it was like, man, reading Life of Milarepa, I'm like, I feel like a Tibetan now. I'm so enamored by it, and I appreciate its beauty. I think I didn't realize that it's essentially, it's kind of all the best stuff. I mean, without being too specialness selective here, it's like it's Indian Buddhism mixed with Hindu Tantra,
Mhm.
mixed with the Bon tradition, which is the ancient Chinese, or I'm sorry, ancient Tibetan. And then you have like even some kind of Zen flavored in, maybe some Taoist flavored in from China.
Mhm.
Um, it's just
Yeah.
incredible. And it's like, it's non-dual, it's heavy based on compassion.
Yes.
It's heavy based on a big theme with Milarepa's futility of the world, non-dual.
Yes.
So it's like, man, it is, I already loved those guys. And now I'm just like, okay, Mahamudras,
Yeah.
respect. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like they took all of the best flavors
totally.
and then it's like this incredible dish, but it's taken like a long time to like have it be perfect. Like
Oh,
all
that
the
was like in
spices.
the mountains. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
what happened was the Muslim invaders in India essentially killed a lot of Buddhists, and they killed a lot of Hindus in India at that, 1,000 years ago. And so they ran away. Like, Padmasambhava,
Mm.
who I'm not as familiar with, but I need to. But that lineage, Milarepa's teacher was Marpa, the translator,
Yes.
who went to India to get the texts kind of on the run, and like came back to translate the Indian stuff into Tibetan language. So it's like it was like this refuge from invasion, and it's like
Whoa.
way up there in Tibet, they kind of can just sit there and meditate and get it. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's just like monastery of the world. It's beautiful.
Yeah, there's also like this quality of like resilience and like we're gonna keep doing this no matter what the
Right.
odds are.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Top
I
of the
think
world.
we need that energy
Mm-hmm.
right now. If I could speak for the collective,
Yeah,
we need some of that energy.
just firm, unshakable resilience
Yeah.
in spite of all odds.
Mhm.
Yeah, Milarepa's story is incredible. I don't know. Are you familiar?
No, I wrote it down because I'd like to. I've heard that name a million times.
Yeah.
But I'd love. It's funny. I went to Naropa, and sometimes Tibetan Buddhism feels like my weakness.
Yeah, interesting. So
Yeah.
it didn't resonate with you as much back then. You found the tantras.
Yeah, I was in my tantric tradition when I started at Naropa,
Okay.
but I just studied like all the lots of other things, but I never took a Tibetan Buddhism class at Naropa,
Oh wow.
ironically. So I kind of
Yeah.
missed out on that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I won't. I'll just give you a tease, which is I won't give you the big life story, but he kind of is that meditate in the caves guy
Mhm.
for I think about 12 years, and on very little food, and like hunters would come up and like get scared because they thought he was a ghost, because he was just like skin and bones, and he would make soup out of grass, like nettles and like brush and stuff like that. So he's often depicted as green. Sometimes he would be described as having green skin because he would just eat grass every few months in a
Whoa.
soup. Yeah, and he just broke all of it.
Uh-huh.
And so
Uh-huh.
by the time he was done with that, um, it gives me chills. But apparently, there's photos of it. Apparently, you can go to one of his caves and see a handprint.
Mm.
There is a hand imprint. There's a
Mm.
few of them of caves and rocks around Nepal and
Mm.
Tibet where
Mm.
he literally just pushed
Mm.
his hand.
Mm.
into the cave wall in front of his
Oh, yeah.
disciples. And, I mean, the explanation
Yeah.
is he didn't see any difference
Yes, exactly.
between him and the cave. So,
Exactly.
it's like it wasn't like it was hot or something. He's Neo.
Exactly. I was about to say that.
Mm-hmm. He's just,
Exactly.
the veil is not holding up anymore to him. And so, yeah, so there's like photos of like a man's handprint in the
Totally.
rock wall.
Totally. Yeah, that's actually like the explanation for miracles in kind of like the Indian traditions or yoga is often that idea of kind of like you're so disillusioned by the illusion of separateness that you're able to just manipulate reality. And so the way the stories usually go is like a saint like Amma. Do you know
Mm-hmm.
Amma?
Yeah,
And her
sure.
in her biography, it's like there's a great festival that she did where she just had all of these like rice candies or something in a box, but it went infinitely. And she
Oh,
never refilled the
just
box.
kept, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's just like that's like the Neo and the Matrix thing where it's like she can do that because there's no hangups around separation.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, that's Jesus feeding the multitudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been aware of Amma for a while. There's a fantastic book called "Women of Power and Grace"
Mm.
by Timothy Conway, who I interviewed on my show. He's an old white dude in Arizona who had a mystical experience at 15, and he's very lettered, but he studied under Nisargadatta
Oh
for
wow.
a little while.
That's
He's
cool.
like he's just an ancient white mystic. He's not ancient because he's still very lucid, but he's an older guy and he's written just tomes, and like he's very obscure. And so I think part of my job is to like megaphone people like Dan, and it's so fun. And one of his books is called Women of Power and Grace, and it's 9 short biographies on female saints across religious
I
traditions. I
love that.
learned about a few that I didn't know, and Amma's the 90th one.
Oh.
And so he's a big fan, and he's like, we basically have an enlightened person in this woman. So anyway, shout out.
Wow. I'm definitely gonna look that up. I wrote it down.
Oh, it's a terrific book. Yeah, it has 3 Christians at the top too, and
Hmm.
he's not a Christian. He's more of an Advaitin kind of guy.
Hmm.
But man, those some of those female saints the last, like you said, couple hundred years.
Mhm.
I would just be like reading in the park, crying, just like, yeah, I'm fine. Just running around, melting.
Okay, so how did this all start? Have you always had a spiritual impulse or did it come on later?
It kind of did always be was there. Um, it really starts with my dad. My dad did like the act 1, act 2, act 3 for me. Someone helped me realize, which sounds patronizing. So I'm sorry, but I've now, after putting out my book, Original Sin is a Lie, so many people that I've met have gone from kind of the act 2 to act 3, if you will. This is the series. Act 1, rigid, controlling institution. My dad was the altar boy in Catholic school.
Hmm.
Act 2, kind of atheist punk rock period. He was like a militant atheist. He's very
Wait, are you talking about your dad or are you talking about you?
my dad.
Oh, you're talking about your
I'm
dad.
talking
Okay,
about this phase of the process that so many people go through of like growing up in a controlling religion, leaving it, kind of having the punk rock atheist period. It's all BS, man. And then act 3 of spiritual, and act 3 mystic.
yes.
He met a woman. My parents divorced when I was baby. They're still homies, and so I'm lucky for that. He met a woman who was in Austin, Texas, a massage therapist, Reiki healer, worked with essential oils, read esoteric books. Which are all very common now, but in the early 90s
Oh,
was
for
like
sure.
insane in Texas. And she had all these synchronicities together, and he just like became very spiritual. And so he was reading, Yogananda and A Course in Miracles and things like that when I was a kid. And I think that inspired me. My mom's side is like Easter, Christmas, Episcopal. And so she just didn't care very much, just totally supported open-minded explorations. And So yeah, I read, and my mom said recently, because somebody asked her, you know, why did your son wrote a book on religion? Like, where did that start? And she goes, when everybody was reading Harry Potter, Bobby was reading Thich Nhat Hanh. And that's true. I really was reading like Living Buddha, Living Christ at like 13 or something like that. So
Mm.
I've just been like reading about this stuff and entranced by it, and
Mm.
seeing the perennial philosophy, seeing the threads,
Mm.
between the paths, which is, it's almost frustrating sometimes because you're like, it's so clear that these are all pointing to the same reality. They're all clearly unique expressions. Um, but yeah, I followed my interest and I went to UT, University of Texas, for film, and all my electives were in religion. And so the guy was like, "Hey, he goes, if you stay another year, you can just get a bachelor's in religion too."
Mm.
And I was probably stoned, and I was like, "That sounds cool. Let's do it." So I did that. So I have two useless degrees in my 5 years, and then I made films about religion. I was like, okay, cool. I have a documentary kind of skills and experience, and I did not know, Hanna, in my early 20s, that no one would care about very slow paced PBS style documentaries about religion, besides
Really?
my mom and me. Yeah, nobody really watched my films. A couple of them play at festivals. Like I had a couple go get into, and I'm proud of them, and they made me who I am, but they're pretty serious, and they're
Mm.
slow. And
Were you serious and not slow or?
no, so I was in theater in school, and I did stand-up comedy when I was in like middle school and high school. So I would do like theater and stand-up, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll do that, and I'll do film. And I met guys in college and gals who were so much funnier than me,
Mm.
where I was like they're, people that are just
Mm.
effortlessly funny.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
was like, I'm pretty good, but those people
Uh,
are, I really like this stuff. I'm really loving Yogananda. I'm really loving, so I'm gonna hard pivot into like super serious religious film.
Mhm.
And it was great. I did that for, 7, 8 years, and just could not make a dime. And
Mm.
so I, came into big tech and marketing. And a few years ago, I started writing my book about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, and
Mm.
came out in 22. And it was like, I was like, okay, I can be kind of funny with it. I can kind of a
Yeah.
little more lighthearted with it. So that's kind of like, I'm in my act three, right? If you will, of like
Mm.
kind of integrating the, child comic with the serious 20s scholar attempts to say, okay, no, it's all part of it. Actually, it's all led me to this kind of accessible humanness of it all.
Yeah.
Best I can.
Yeah, I'm thinking about you making these religious documentaries, and I'm kind of thinking about like what the average person would actually want, and what people would actually watch is like cult documentaries, you know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're huge right now. Yeah,
It's huge right now.
Morgan Freeman made like a series on God or religion on
Mm.
Netflix like a few years ago. No one watched it.
Ah,
No. And that's when I was like, I was so vindicated. I was like, have you heard of it? No one had heard of it or watched it. It's like Finding God, voiced by Morgan Freeman. It looks
and they
amazing.
have like
Here he is, the
Freeman,
host.
nobody's watching
It's
it.
nobody's heard of it. Yeah, I was like, okay, then it's
Are
not
you
me.
sure we're not in Kali Yuga?
I mean, it's just, yeah, it's just like you said, it's not framed in an interesting way. Whereas like that,
Yes.
people want to see like the cult side of it, or like the
Yes.
mystics more. But
Well,
yeah, like my film
people
was on
want a
Gaia.
conflict.
Right.
People want a conflict. You know what I mean? Like we watch
Right.
stuff for a conflict. It takes a special type of person who just wants to watch something to be uplifted by the saints. You know, it's like, oh wow, it's like such a wonderful feeling.
Mhm.
But there's no conflict. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. Well, so my film, I have like my thesis film is called The Kingdom Within. That's like my documentary feature
Mm.
about Christianity and yoga. So I was reading Yogananda and I was taking New Testament classes. And Yogananda, for anyone who doesn't know, he talks a lot about Jesus. He's the first Indian Swami to come to America. When you talk about
Mm.
Rinpoche,
Mm.
you talk about
Mm.
Changpa.
Mm.
Yogananda got here in
Mm.
1920.
Mhm.
So we just celebrated his centennial arrival a few years ago. He was the first, basically, Swami to live and die in America. He went back to India, but he died in California, 50, 51. So, anyway, so he was dealing with Christian America. So he loved Jesus. He considered Jesus an avatar, equal to the Buddha, equal to
Mm.
Krishna, and so on. And so I was reading all his stuff and just loving it and the true kind of mystic teaching of Jesus. And so, and at that same time, it was about 2010 when I was graduating. There was a famous pastor who's still famous, but has lost a lot of love, I think, in his community. Pastor Mark Driscoll,
Mm.
who is in Seattle, I believe, and he's kind of like a guy's guy, like drinking beer. Like he was like cool back then, but he famously said yoga is demonic, and it
Oh.
went had a news kind of minor news run, and
Wait, what time period was this?
it's like 2010,
Oh, so this was
2009.
recently.
Yeah, I mean,
Even though that was 15
15
years
years
ago.
ago. Yeah, no, it wasn't that recent, Hannah. Um, no, I Yeah, early 20s for me. I'm 36. And I was like, this is perfect. I was like,
Mm.
that's the tee up for my film. And so I went around Central Texas. I didn't go to India or
Oh.
interview Pastor Mark because I was a broke college student, but I interviewed like Texas pastors and yoga teachers and a few swamis and people in these traditions. It was really, uh, quite the exercise for me, kind of both spiritually and filmmaking wise, and interviewed 18 people. And to your point about the Conjure, I'm bringing this up because now people are like going back and watching it. Like they're kind of finding out about me and they're like, hey, just watch your film. I'm like, oh my God, it's
Yeah,
from
finally.
10 years ago. Yeah, where were you 9 years ago when I no. When it had 2,000 views, all for my mom. But
Just has it on repeat in the kitchen.
yeah, yeah. Love this so much, son. Thanks, mom. I was filming all these pastors who were open-minded. People in my circles, they were like interfaith Austin Pastor Jamie and like my old father Pat, who's like open-minded.
Oh.
And I was at a party and this guy he goes, what are you working on? I was like, yeah, he was like a successful producer. And I was like, oh, I'm excited about this film, yoga and Christianity. And he goes, are you getting anyone like who disagrees with you or like who's kind of crazy? And I was like, no, I'm just getting, people who are aligned kind of with this unitive message. And he's like, he goes, can I be honest with you? I wouldn't watch it. And it was like kind of like we were acquaintances, like we weren't really close friends. So it was like the right distance for him to kind of slap me around with that. And I was like, oh, really? I didn't want to offend it, but it was like he's like, no offense. He's like, I'll just be honest with you. You got to get somebody who's crazy. And then it'll be compelling because it'll be playing off each other and so on. And he was right. Shout out Pat.
How to get someone who's crazy.
You got to get some nutso fundamentalists. And so I did.
Oh, like the guys that hold the signs on the street corner that say Jesus and
Yeah, I didn't go to the Westboro Baptist Church because they're in, I think, Kansas or something. But anyway, I got, I'm in Texas, and Austin is basically the Pacific Northwest politically, but right outside of Austin is the South again. And so I got three guys actually. I blast emailed like 20 different churches, and I got three guys who are almost like varying levels of fundamentalist. Two guys are pretty reasonable, to be honest, like, but they are very firm that Hinduism is good.
Yeah.
But they came on the interview and they were nice and did it. But there's this one guy in my film who I like drove out to the country and interviewed this guy. He's like, it's Westboro Baptisty, and it makes the film a lot better. It definitely helps kind of my point.
Wait, so am I hearing you say that you added these conversations to the existed documentary, or
Well, it was still in production. Yeah, so
production?
I had interviewed like 10 or 12 people at that time. You're starting to carve it up, in the
Yes.
process of filmmaking. You start editing, and it's for documentaries are really fun because they're very improvisational. You kind of follow the story. You follow, they're a lot of fun that way. And you have a framework and you have an idea, but I was like, oh yeah, I need to pepper in some crazy.
Yes.
And I definitely did. And actually my grandma, I'm just thinking of this, my grandmother, before she passed, was watching like a screening of the film with me. And I remember her making a disapproving face at the crazy guy, of being like, this guy's ridiculous. And I was like, yes, like, whatever, grandma,
Yeah.
thanks, grandma, you get it.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
demonstrate. I'm not trying to edit his words or anything. This is just this guy's
It's
opinion
the
in contrast. Yeah.
Contrast is what makes a dish interesting. If you have like fettuccine Alfredo, but then you also have something also really rich on the side, it's kind of like, ugh. It's like you need that, like that dressing that has the vinegar in it or something.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta have
need
that
crispy
contrast.
toast. You need that crispy
that
bread
crispy
next to that creamy noodle.
Yeah, like a texture difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it gave some contrast to it.
Yeah,
and people
exactly.
can come up with their own conclusion.
Yeah. Who do you resonate with on this? And it was like pretty clear, like the open-minded pastor and the old swami who sees the beauty in all things. It's like, okay.
Totally.
So anyway, that's my kind of that was like my feature doc. I did some other shorts, and then I did do a feature on Palestine back in the day. But yeah, it was I'm proud of those films, and I'd like to make them eventually at some point, but they take a lot of time and energy and money. And
oh my god, I'm stressed about editing my
30 seconds. I know it is stressful. So sending peace.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, okay, the question that's lingering for me is kind of like God. And so you've always had this interest in spirituality. You're reading Thich Nhat Hanh when everybody else is reading Harry Potter. Out of respect.
Thanks.
Karmas. There's some karmas happening.
I was anti J.K. Rowling before it was cool.
Yeah.
But something about this broad.
Yeah, you intuited it. But I'm wondering, like, have you always like felt like this belief in a higher power, or like, what do you have any feelings about the word God? Like, what's up with that?
Yeah, I just love him. No, her. You said her. I love that. I very early on, I read about this in the book. I remember feeling so. I remember being a little kid, being handed a pamphlet. I would go. Our church was fine. We went twice a year, and it was Father Pat. It was great. When you are a kid and you sleep over at your friend's house on Saturday night, you got to get up and go to church with them. And so I would do that. I would go to these, like, my friend was more Baptist, and I remember going to like vacation Bible school or whatever, and just feeling that energy of like the rigidity, and like this little old lady came up and was like, do you want to go to heaven, or because if you do, you need to sign Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, right here. I mean, I was 7 or 8 years old, and I just specifically remember that sensation of like the resistance, and
something didn't feel right to you.
Well, it's got to be more complicated than this and more simple at the same time. It's like, it's not about an allegiance and a signature on a brochure, and so I definitely have felt a spiritual connection, and I've never called myself atheist or agnostic. I've always been pretty theistic, and in the deep end here for a long time, and just reading all these guys and gals over the years, and just seeing that the really, in my view, kind of the graduates, if you will, if this world is a school, all these men and women through different cultures and periods and times, they all sound very similar because they've eliminated their ego individuality and just become a vessel spirit. They just
Yeah.
become united with God entirely. And so yeah, I'm grateful for that. I think some people hear my book title and they think that I had this like dramatic exit, because it's so spicy, like original sin is a lie. Like, but it's just marketing, and it just means you're inherently good and original sin is a lie. And I'm willing to die on that hill.
Mm-hmm.
I'll always be the author of Original Sin is a Lie, um but yeah, I'm grateful that I've kind of always had this sense of, kind of unity, consciousness, sentient beings,
Yeah.
shared brotherhood, shared sisterhood. Yeah.
So your dad went through the Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, but you didn't.
Somebody said that, they go, "Oh, he did that for you."
Ah,
Oh, okay. Maybe,
that's
and
funny.
maybe I did something for him. I mean, who knows, but
That's funny. My guru says that Baba, who is his guru, meditated under a urinal so that we don't have to.
wow. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of karmic currency
Well,
floating.
the lineage is supposed to lift the karmas as it continues. It's
Yeah.
supposed to get easier.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that it's like easier. Well, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean that there aren't difficulty, but I think consciousness is evolving. So
Mhm.
we don't necessarily need to keep making the same sacrifices.
Yeah. It's it starts to get beyond my understanding of making those kinds of claims, but I also acknowledge it. And Richard, my Apache teacher, was very confident in explaining, like, some of these concepts. Like one thing he said to me, which I thought was really useful, was you only need to be 51% good. I thought that was really useful. It's like we all think enlightenment is like 100% or like this perfect thing. And he's like, as long as you're more positive than negative,
Mm-hmm.
karmically, that's what you need to do. With the spiritual doctor, will arrive when you're in the negatives, in the lower half. But if you're, I think most humans are north of 50. Just keep it going. You'll keep working through it. You'll keep going up. So, that's a karmic idea. And the non-dualists kind of are dismissive of karma.
Mm-hmm.
The non-dualists are very much karma and reincarnation also exist in the dream.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Yes.
non-dualist view. And again, it's like, but that doesn't mean they don't have effects. Just like this world, if I jump off a building, I think I can fly. There's laws of physics apply, so this body will, um, you know, will fall down and have the impact of that. But it's the same thing with karma and reincarnation. They're also working on our, spiritual bodies. So I know what the koshas, all these different things are applying to it within the dream. So the non-dualists say just forget everything else and just transcend out of it, just break out of it. But I think that the bhaktis or the karma yogis or whatever, there's a way out that way too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you could blend all of the different yogas. Karma yoga could use a little bit of bhakti yoga, could use a little bit of jnana yoga. Yeah.
Totally. Well, Raja yoga.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the aggregate.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
it's funny because some gurus will kind of say ours is Raja yoga. That's kind of like a really
Yeah.
guru conspiracy number 2.
Yeah, who has the most Raja yoga?
Yeah, Yogananda is like Kriya yoga. It's Raja yoga that Krishna was talking about. Vivekananda, he's like Ramakrishna discovered Raja yoga, and maybe they're all correct too. Who am I? One of your questions earlier, you're saying about God. I wasn't crazy about that word for a while because it's so Christian and loaded.
Totally.
I see that everywhere in American spirituality, that like of how difficult that word is, and I think I'm becoming more comfortable with it because it's just form. For me, it's there's a few I like. In fact, I have a chapter called "The Other Names for God," where I basically just list. Here's the big list,
Yeah,
and
totally.
and there's some really good ones. The Hindus have some great ones, but
Yeah.
the ineffable, the infinite,
Yeah.
ever new joy, the infinite current.
Mhm.
Is Babaji.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, there's
Mhm.
a lot of good names for that because it's beyond name. It's
Mhm.
um, but I'm coming back around to the word God, and God is the word in A Course in Miracles. So I'm also an ACIM guy,
Yeah.
and some of that language, people messaged me and said, I think you like Course in Miracles, but it's so Christian
Mm.
terminology, and it's like, well,
Mm.
it's just the semantics.
Yeah.
It's almost I mean, I think you could
Mhm.
confidently say it's non-Christian. It's just about 180 degrees different theologically,
Totally.
uh, but it definitely does use God,
Totally.
Christ, sin, and so people are like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, I grew up with no Christian influence almost at all.
Hmm.
So I have zero baggage around the word God. I never
Amazing.
have.
Good
I
for
was
you.
a hardcore atheist, so I have a little bit of a different story. But I've never had any baggage around that. But I do think that I don't know, I'm kind of like a teacher of like push through the language that you don't personally
Yeah,
like
totally. Okay,
because
so
it's
what's
like
that showing you? Yeah.
yeah, no, exactly. What's that showing you? And then also it's like I'm interested in the juice. I don't care what glass the juice is in. And people are just like holding up the glass
Great.
being like, I don't like this glass. It's not my favorite shape. And it's like, just drink the fucking juice.
Yeah.
Just drink the juice.
Ramakrishna says, it has that image. Have you heard that one of it's like farmers counting the mangoes. He said
Oh.
he said all the farmers are just counting the trees, counting the branches, counting the mangoes. Just take a bite,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Exactly.
enjoy its sweetness.
Hmm.
He has a great moment in his. I mean, there's so many great moments, but he has a great moment that like knocked me around the other day because I'm continuously in the fly trap of late stage capitalism, where his nephew Haride, who was his attendant, was carrying a calf, and he said he came by him and he said, "Oh, this will be such a great heifer, in a few years. Like it's an investment. Like I'll have this is a great calf for
Oh.
in the next like few years." And Ramakrishna just bursts out laughing, like incredulous. He was found it hilarious that Haride was planning years ahead.
Oh.
He was like, you think that you have some control in her play. You're so we're so humans, we're so counting our, material things as though they have meaning or awareness or
Or will give us real stability.
real stability. And
Yeah.
that's not in the divine. It's just laughable to just
Hmm.
to those people. I mean, it's
Hmm.
so profound.
Hmm.
And he
Oh
he
yeah,
has
he's
that
holding the
childlike,
calf. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he's holding the calf like I know exactly what my life is going to be like now.
It's an investment. It's like, yeah, this
Yeah.
is it's very American financial,
Yeah.
all this stuff. And he's just going, oh my
Right.
God, how funny. It was genuinely funny to him.
Right, because she could grow up and be a barren cow,
Totally.
has no
Or
milk,
somebody could
or
take
gets
her, or,
sick.
yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Anything can happen.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
these sort of
busting your
stories.
trusts.
I love stories. I love telling stories like spiritual tales and things like this. And this is definitely one of those stories that could lead somebody to think, well, like, what's the point of planning anything?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? What do you think of that thought?
I think that there's always an egoic reaction to spiritual wisdom to try to call it out. I think that most spiritual teachers don't advocate like sheer uh, skydiving necessarily. It's like you have a dharmic responsibility. There's a really, I mean, Ramana Maharshi, who sat on top of a hill,
Mm.
Runachala for 50 years or something. He's kind of the stereotypical Swami on the hill, and he
Yeah.
never told anyone. And he's very non-dual. He's
Yeah.
extreme. It's all for naught. He never told anyone to go run off into the jungle,
Hmm.
um, because that would be making it real.
Hmm.
And so that's the error. The trick is to detach mentally in the world. So
Yes.
doing your role, but you're
Yes. The
Well,
rules
that's what I
really
said
apply.
earlier. You're watching it, yeah, it's like if you think that you need to go off and get away, well, congratulations. You just validated the unreal with your belief in it.
Mm,
So it's
mm,
not quite doesn't mean no plan,
mhm.
but it does mean that don't be as attached to the plans. It means
Don't fall
follow the
for
guidance of it,
don't fall
follow
for
the
it.
direction of it. Yeah, don't fall for it. Don't there's no security in, the sand through the fingers, basically. So she's
Yeah, I think
make the
there's a
sandcastle, but the water's coming.
no, totally. And then you want to make the sandcastle for the joy of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy the dream. Yeah. It's I think the ego, in terms of, and of course in Miracles is a very sophisticated, does a really great job, I think, of like personifying the spiritual mind, higher self, Holy Spirit, and the ego mind.
Mhm.
And the ego mind is just always resisting. The ego mind is terrified, it's very fearful. It's always afraid. It's clinging on to this kind of its own little kingdom. And the goal really, it does seem to be, is to undo that, thinking and undo that mindset by aligning with the higher self, aligning with the Holy Spirit, aligning with the, capital L love in all of it. So, but to, those kinds of questions are the ego. Like only the ego is embarrassed. Only the ego is disappointed. There's a few ways that you can see which one you're in.
Oh, that's a good point. I like that. I like that. I call the ego your personal brand consultant and your bodyguard.
Yeah.
It has two
Yeah.
jobs.
I, that's interesting. Yeah, brand consultant for sure. ACIM says the ego wants you to die. So I would say, I mean, it wants you to die to continually be caught in
Exactly.
samsara. It, it,
Exactly.
want, it wants to retain its control of this false kingdom, basically. So we're just undoing that. It does. Guilt and shame are very powerful too. I mean, a lot of A Course in Miracles is about subconscious guilt. The cosmology of it is that we think that we separated from God, and so we have this guilt about that. We're just
Oh.
undoing that guilt. We're just undoing that guilt to go back, to wake up from the dream.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
pretty great. I consider it a spiritual masterpiece. It's not the path. It's not the one way, but
Mm.
I think it's
It
definitely.
has some good guideposts in it.
I think it's certainly worthy of, a life path.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Hmm. There was a saying that came up in my mind earlier when we were talking about like, well, should you just not have a plan then? And I think there's a Sufi saying that's don't forget to tie up your camel.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard
Right.
it's like
That's good.
you don't want to be such a dervish that you forget to tie up your camel and then you don't have a camel anymore.
Totally.
And so it's like you have to toe the line. I think it's all about self-responsibility. It's like even like my guru talks about how like a yogi has their finances together, but not in the sense of like being money driven or like you have lots of money. It's just like are your bills auto paying? Like are you in debt? Like like are you taking actions that are leading your life to be more chaotic than it needs to be? Like a yogi wants their life everything to be in order. Because if everything's in order, you're not stressed out about the shit that you keep overlooking. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, don't forget to tie up your camel.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
and presence. It's like
Yes.
if you're really present
Exactly.
with it, then you're going to go, oh, this camel would run away or somebody could take it.
Totally.
You're really present with your finances, then you'll try to categorize them and say, oh, this was too much, or this, oh, I have room here. Yeah, it's like, it's
Totally.
because you actually sat down with them,
Totally.
looked at them. So yeah,
Yeah.
mindfulness, I think, is my
Right.
answer.
And then you don't have to go through the aversion experience of your overdraft fees. It's like,
Mm,
so that's don't forget to tie up your camel.
yeah, that's great. Practical, it has to be practical. I think it's too lofty and You know, the dream stuff. I mean, I think the ego hates the dream stuff too. Like the ego's like, that's all a
Oh no,
dream,
no,
really,
totally.
really, pal.
No. The ego's like Agent Smith.
Exactly,
The ego's like, this is not a dream.
100%.
This is not a
HI Young.
dream.
I think several commentators have made that uh point before. Yeah, he's and we're taking over, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I love that image. Somebody's talking about the Matrix recently, and well, I think my favorite scene is Cypher when he's at the steak dinner.
Oh yes.
That's like the best scene. And he's like, I know
Yes.
this steak isn't real, but
Yes.
that doesn't make it any less delicious. He's just such a good little Judas.
I love that. That's one of my favorite scenes too. And then people make
No, I
that
want to
meme.
make memes of it.
No, have you seen
Will people
make
get it?
memes? I
Of
actually
him
think
biting the steak?
yeah, no, I think I've actually made a meme.
Yeah, you have.
Wait, there's so many of them, but it's like steak tastes so good when you don't have an Advaitic Vedantin in your ear saying that it's an illusion.
That's, of course you have. Yeah, that's why we're friends. That's brilliant. And Agent Smith's like, the agents are just like, eat up, buddy. You need some A1?
Well, it's actually based off of that other meme where it's the guy eating pizza and he's like, Little Caesars taste so good when you have a bitch in your ear saying that it's bad. So it's like that, but it's Cypher.
Got it. Are you friends with James McCrae? Do you know World Director?
He's had me on his podcast a couple of times.
Okay, great. I was gonna say, because like he's spiritual meme king.
Exactly.
And you're a spiritual meme queen. So
thank you. Wow.
Yeah.
I hardly even make memes anymore. I have to have that crown removed at this point.
Yeah, you had a meme period,
I did.
So, yeah, it's like a blue period. It's like
I know. I posted so many memes because it was the beginning of the pandemic and there was literally nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And then I got very busy. Too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't do it as much.
I finished my book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to just wake up, drink coffee, and write.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. It was awesome. I mean, that part of it.
Yeah. I remember I was at my ashram like 10 years ago, probably. And my guru gives a talk every Saturday night. And it was a Saturday, sitting in the back. I can picture this. I can remember every feeling that I felt. He's giving a talk and he was talking about the ego. Mm-hmm. And I remember he was saying something. I don't remember what he said. But I remember my question was, I asked him a question. I was like, how do I you're talking all this stuff about the ego. How do I not just become like an amorphous blob? Mm-hmm. And I think I always look back on that story as very compassionately because I think that that's where my level of awareness was, where I thought like, if you do any ego work, you're just going to become like a blank slate or like the who-ness of who you are is just going to disappear. And I think that is such a good example of what the ego will trick you into thinking.
Yes.
But that's not the thing that actually happens. Actually, when the ego is refined and purified, there's almost like a more exalted expression of your individuality.
Right.
So you don't actually lose. You lose all the shit that's holding you back, but you get to keep the individuality of your expression.
Totally. I'm going to disclaimer this by saying that we're working here in form and concepts, which are inherently flawed. Mm-hmm. But what I would say is, I think I've seen, we've all seen a lot of stuff online about these varying takes on relationship to ego, right? We have like, you're supposed to go to war with your ego and fight it and kill it. And then we've seen like almost like the kind of response to that of like, no, you're supposed to befriend your ego. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to, use Ram Dass kind of has that, it's like
Matt Kahn has that. Matt Kahn?
I've heard the name.
Okay, anywho, he has that energy around the
ego. Befriend the ego. That's even more pervasive, I think, than fight your ego. Mm-hmm. But I would say it's actually a third take, which is what A Course in Miracles is, which is undo the ego. Mm. You're undoing it. You're just undoing it. You're not going to war with it, and you're certainly not befriending because you're undoing it. And when I say ego, I'm talking about the Course in Miracles perception. So someone's talking about like the Jungian, that's a little different from a definition standpoint. It's similar, but I realize you need like a personality to operate as well. So saying you don't have to have that, but I agree with you on what you said. Like as you undo it, that's what I believe enlightenment is. I think
Mhm.
when you undo the ego separate mind,
Mhm.
the split mind of the ego consciousness, then you're the unitive mind. You're
Mhm.
actually removing your own individuality of the ego, of duality, individuality, and you're becoming a pure vessel of spirit. You're the avatar of the enlightened being is the pure expression of the one in form.
Mhm.
And so the ego is gone. There's no ego to have any guilt about themselves or others or any
Mhm.
conflict for any reason. Jesus forgave his killers. He's on the cross. He says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." I think that's the enlightened being's
Mhm.
language,
Mhm.
is forgiveness and empathy
Mhm.
for a murderer,
Mhm.
because he
Mhm.
just transcended blame and guilt and so on. So that's what we're doing. We're
Yes.
undoing the ego, and I feel like I see befriend the ego everywhere. And Aubrey, who's you know I've been on his show, he's been on mine. We're acquaintances. We hang out every once in a while, but I like a lot of what he's doing, Aubrey Marcus. But he's kind of more of a you need to befriend your ego thing, and I'm a little
I think
more
it's too much of a
non-dual than
slippery. It's
that.
a slippery slope to befriend the ego. I don't know if that's my traditional yoga mentality, but the ego is so clever
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
could so easily think you've befriended it, but actually it's still holding you hostage.
You're making the unreal real. I mean, that's the
Exactly.
Ramana.
Oh, that's such a good point. That's such a good way to put it.
So why bother? It
Right.
doesn't exist.
Yeah, totally. You're putting too much stake in it or something.
Exactly. Exactly. You're giving it
Yeah.
way too much weight to what doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's much better to be Ramakrishna laughing at Ride with the calf.
Right. Yeah.
There's a way to just unravel it. But
Yes.
but 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 again, that doesn't mean that
Yeah.
that you're a whirling dervish in everything of your life. You still tie up the camel and so on. Like I said, that's great.
Yeah.
It's a real
Yeah.
subtle. It's a tightrope.
It's razor thin. It's like razor thin. And it's even like anytime you think that you're looking at your ego, it's your ego thinking it's looking at it. It's like it's so but there's almost no point. It's like I think this is the thing that you're saying. Like there's actually almost no point in trying to find your ego. It's more effective to try to just use the wholeness of your being to be an instrument to serve the one. So if you're doing that, then you don't have to fucking worry about that other stuff. My guru always says all the time, like, there could be a guy who's an egomaniac but he's doing great work in the world. He's better off than somebody who has the ego, the inverted ego, where they hate themselves and, all these sorts of
Mm,
things.
yeah,
That's the
totally.
most pernicious version of the ego.
Yeah, I
You
think
think you're
that's
not good
true.
enough.
The guilt and shame is that's low on the Hawkins scale. Yeah, the yogas are great. You mentioned it earlier, and hope I'm sure most of your audience is familiar, but in case anyone isn't, Jnana yoga, Bhakti yoga, Karma yoga, kind of the main three. And that fourth is Raja. Jnana yoga is the mental. That's the neti, not this, not this. It's just undoing from us. That is Ramana, the Swami on top of the hill.
Mm-hmm.
Just undoing it, seeing through the illusion and breaking it that way. That's one way. But the bhakti yoga is the
Mm-hmm.
poets and the musicians and the artists of crying tears of devotion
Mm-hmm.
to the divine. That's another way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a funny kind of interplay. I think Yanis think bhaktis are crazy, and
Oh, yeah.
bhaktas think Yanis are cold. There's
Yeah, no, totally. I could see that.
but then the karma yogi, they're just serving. They're just
Yeah,
serving.
they're just sweeping the floor and he's like, what are these guys arguing about?
Right. He said it's dirty, and yeah, these people are hungry. What are these guys
You
doing?
guys are lazy.
Yeah, and they're all beautiful and they're all avenues, and like that's the Gita. That's it's like Western Christianity again. A lot of my audience is like kind of ex-Christian, and so I have to kind of give them some conceptual stuff sometimes of like you don't really have that in like American Protestantism in wasp world. It's like it's just Jesus has died for your sins, and then you say you believe in him and he's your savior, and then you're good. And it's like the East has just these beautiful intricacies of personality and devotional styles that fit
Yes.
the needs of the person, you know?
Yes. Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah, there's these different options that might resonate with different temperaments.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel that. I also
Oh,
think
it's
there's an absence of bhakti, like in the way that it's actually experienced in the East. In the Western context, it's there might be some churches that have that sort of bhakti sort of like feeling happening, but I just know from experience teaching Westerners about devotion that no people don't understand what it means.
elaborate, will you? I mean, that's
Like
great, interesting.
and I think it's an interesting because on the topic of ego, devotion is a tool to work the ego. Because devotion challenges you to love even when nothing is going your way. And the ego doesn't like that. So it's like
Right.
literally
It's
being on a
conditional
devotional
love.
path. Yeah, conditional love. So the devotional path automatically works the ego. Like it just does it. And so anywho, when I say devotion and bhakti, I mean like kind of like like when you watch like a live stream at a temple in India, people are like prostrating before these deities. They're offering flowers, they're bringing food and money, like all these sorts of things. And it's really like this, like, I love you so much that I would like give all of this for you. And of course, there's the bowl that goes around in the church asking for money, but there's not that full body, like, I'm going to throw myself on the floor thing so much in the American context. I think there's some ecstatic traditions, like in the Pentecostal world, where people are throwing their bodies around,
Yeah.
say it the least. But I don't
Hi-yo.
know. I don't know if that's the same. That
Yeah,
I
there's
don't
not
mean
enough
it's not the same.
prostration in American churches.
Yeah, no, but it's a different. It's like a feeling. It's like I am so in awe of your power that I'm just gonna lay my body down on the floor and just say Jai Ma. Like, oh my God, how could I ever even conceive of you? How could I ever even give you an offering, given everything you have ever given me? Like, that's not like a mentality that I think Westerners are familiar with. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. It's really it's sad how sanitized
Mm-hmm.
it's become, you know, and it just over the centuries it just became more and more codified. There's a great image that I wish was in my book, but I heard it after it came out from brother David Steindl-Rast, who's a Benedictine monk. He said, and this I think applies very well to American Christianity, but most religions. He says he said all religions come from mysticism, and over time they become more wooden and rigid and so on. He said it's like a volcano. When the volcano explodes, it is earth shattering. You know, that's the avatar. That's the individual that loses their individuality, and they're so connected, it's so powerful, and then the lava flows down the mountain, you know, it starts the growth of the religion, but in a decade or a century or a millennia it becomes cold dead rock,
Yeah.
and that's what happens. And I think that that's just such a perfect
Mm-hmm.
synonym for, you know, this really unfortunate distortion. You know, I mean, I think a lot of what I'm trying to do is one of my jokes is like I'm actually a Jesus defender, you know, in some way. I'm trying to kind of say, no, this is what he really meant. And then there's the ego goes, well, you know, no, but I've studied New Testament a lot and I've read a lot of mystics, and you know, it's pretty clear once you look have the both of those lenses that this guy was just another non-dual mystic. You know, these Christians get, well, he resurrected. Well, so did Sri Yukteswar. I mean,
Oh,
there's
totally.
literally
There's lots of
dozens
stories.
of Hindu gurus who have come back to their disciples. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
What
it
if it's
is.
not that big of a deal? No, I feel you though. Like it's
Yeah,
not that
it
original was
happens.
an idea.
Yeah, you break the cycle of birth and death. Like that's what we're all trying to do. And so then you show back up to people who love you. And he did that, you know, and so it's like, but it's a funny kind of third ground, you know, because the atheists are like, some atheists think he never existed, you know, and that's not very likely. Like there's a lot of very old texts, well, but not contemporary. Yeah, there's a great Bible scholar, Bart Ehrman, who wrote a book, Did Jesus Exist? He's written a lot of great books, but that was his one kind of okay, let's really address this Jesus myth thing, which is taken off, and it's not good scholarship. It's very likely that this,
He was, as I
rabbi walked around ancient Nazareth.
yeah, like as I understand it, he was like one of many people that were kind of prophets at the time, or you could say like he was one of many gurus at the time, and he just
Yeah, there was a bunch. There
had
were
good
also a
marketing.
bunch of miracle workers. There were a bunch of miracle workers. He wasn't
Yeah, totally.
lonely there. But it's extremely historically likely that he walked the earth, and so I'm happy to kind of you know help some secular folks understand that. But I'm also happy to kind of one of the jokes too with like the Christians is like, don't throw out the filthy, rigid institutional bathwater
Yes.
with that beautiful, unconditionally loving baby.
Yes.
Like the master is, love your enemies.
Yes.
Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you is in the New Testament. It's like, we're not doing that now. That's how radical that was, is we have not cracked that one 2,000 years later. And so he's really worthy of contemplation and study and reflection and so on. And but this whole mechanical framework of it that is designed to create shame and fear, control, and so on. It's like,
well, it's ironic because I think it's ironic that it causes so much control and it causes so much fear, because I kind of move through the world with the belief that everybody is looking for the thing that's going to make them feel the most safe and in control. And so I think that the thing that happens when the religion is like reified or crystallized, or the mystical tradition becomes crystallized, is that people are desperately trying to cling on to something that's going to guarantee them safe passage somehow. And so it's like with Christianity, it's like, oh, if you baptize yourself, you have guaranteed yourself safe passage to heaven or some shit. I know it's more complicated.
Yeah, golden ticket to the chocolate factory. Yeah, exactly.
Totally. And so people are looking for safety, but the irony, and this is what the yoga traditions are really trying to tell us, is that real safety comes from recognizing that there's no safety.
Right.
But that takes a level of courageousness and faith, that people aren't willing to jump across that abyss. So they'd rather just stay in the fearful worldview, where if you do XYZ thing, you get the golden ticket. But it doesn't guarantee safety at all.
And what you said reminded me, ironically, of a Trungpa quote, right? Which he says, "You're falling through the air, but there's no ground."
Yeah. Right. So it's good.
Yeah.
You're not going to hit the ground.
You're falling, but there's no ground, so don't worry.
Oh, that's such a good reminder.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
No, that's such a good reminder.
And I think it's also really hard, Hanna. That's what I'm learning too. Again, not for me, because gosh, we didn't grow up in that, but for people who did, it's like there's a lot of like, I was wrong for so many years. It's like it's like, wait, I was so invested in this mentally and emotionally for so many decades. It's really difficult for people to leave the church, leave their community. There's so much to it, but
oh my God, totally.
So
it's like a rupture.
Guys, with that, yeah, it really is. Just to say, And one guy said, he goes, I'm really want to leave my church, but I'm so, because of the hypocrisy and so on and all these things that we're talking about, but I really love aspects of it, and I really love Jesus. And it's really hard, And I said, you don't have to leave. I said, you don't have to leave Jesus. What I said was really study him.
Yes.
Oh
yes. Oh, totally.
And the saints. There's incredible Christian saints over the past 2,000 years.
Absolutely.
Who are who broke the veil
yeah.
in their own ways. Francis is just one. You could study St. Francis your whole life. I really, Mother Maria Scotsova is who I just found through Women of Power and Grace.
Yeah.
But there's a lot. And so John of the Cross, Teresa, all these guys and gals. So it's like, if you're really called to Christianity, but even though there's issues with it, you still don't have to leave. In fact, I would even say it needs you.
It needs you
in some capacity, right?
That's such a good way to put it.
So just zero in on the master, zero in on, the other brothers and sisters who also did that, and that's your path. You don't have to leave.
Well, I think the other, I completely agree with you. And then like the other thing, like I don't want to minimize people's experience either, is like speaking of that worldview where you're given that stability if you stay in the religion. The fear side of it is like, well, if you leave, you're gonna burn in hell. And people grow up from the age of 1 thinking like the consequences of me leaving this thing are literally catastrophic. Like
Right.
I interviewed this guy, John.
Psychopath
No,
God.
totally psychopath god, war god. And I interviewed this guy, John Rainey, who was Christian for 30 years.
Oh, is he Saint Rainey on
Yeah.
Instagram? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be fun for you to listen to our conversation if you do. But yeah.
We're very over similar. No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, well
Of what we're
so
getting across, Cosmic Christ.
exactly. Yeah, but he in our conversation he was talking about how like when he had like the thought that made him start to crumble his worldview, it was terrifying because he was 30 years into like if I don't do this, I'm going to actual hell.
Yeah,
And so that's a thing that could keep somebody in Christianity their whole life is just that fear of eternal damnation.
totally. Yeah, one of the early ones too that helped me was, I mean, less dramatic than him, someone in that incarnation, but the Buddha in hell. I
Mm,
mean, many Christians believe that, and it's
mm,
like, they probably haven't read the Dhammapada,
mm,
um, but was such a preposterous idea to me,
mm, mm,
considering his teachings and his brilliance and wisdom,
mm,
compassion.
mm.
It's like that is not someone who burns if there is a burning. And so it's like, okay, then there's not a burn, first to
Exactly.
unravel it just takes one little thought like that.
That's what happened to John Rainey.
Yeah.
He had like one little thought and then the whole thing came crumbling down.
Yeah, it totally does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, how you doing? You need to take your dog out?
I gotta take my dog out. Gotta go pick up my son.
Yeah, go get your
I
child.
have to tie up my camel
Go
in this
tie up your
world.
camel.
Um, I thought this would be kind of fun. So we vibe on Ramakrishna,
Yeah.
and I have 3
His birthday's
short
next week.
parables. Oh, is it? Oh,
Yeah.
is it?
Anyway, keep going.
I need him this year. I was just gonna share 3 short spiritual parables of
Yeah.
Ramakrishna
Keep
as I
it.
go out. Okay, great. So these are in the form. There's a little book. It's I can't find it now, but it's sayings of Ramakrishna. The Ramakrishna Mission puts it out. It's just like question and answer, like those little cute little guru books. Okay, so these are just 3. One is asking the master, how can we devote our mind to God in this worldly life? He says, if a man lives in the world and busies himself day and night with worldly duties and responsibilities, he cannot give his mind to God. So it's important to go into solitude from time to time and think about God. When the plant is young, it should be fenced in on all sides. Unless there's a fence around it, goats and cattle may eat it up. But when the same plant grows into a mighty oak tree, the same goats and cows will rest in its shade. So you gotta have that practice. You gotta have that fence
Oh,
when
100%.
you're still growing. Okay, number 2. How is one to live in the world and lead a family life? It says, attend to all your duties, but keep your mind fixed on God. Wife, son, father, mother, live with all of them and serve them as if they were your very own, but know in your heart of hearts that they are not your own. The maid in the house of a rich man attends to her work, but her mind dwells in her home in her native village. Furthermore, she brings up her master's children as though they were her own. She speaks of them as my Rama or my Hari, but she knows in her own mind that they do not belong to her. And there's another image from this one. It says, the tortoise moves about in the water of a lake, but do you know where her mind is? On the bank where her eggs are laid. Do all your duties in the world, but let your mind dwell on thoughts of God.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that nice?
Nectar.
And all those little images,
Yes, he's so good with that.
agrarian, yeah. And then last one, he says, why are there so many different religious paths, Hanna? Rama says, God himself has arranged for many ways of worship to suit the varied temperaments of his worshippers in their different stages of growth. A mother has 5 children. There's fish to be cooked. She prepares different kinds of fish dishes to agree with every kind of stomach. For one child, she cooks fish pilau. For another, pickled fish. For another, baked fish. fried fish, so forth. She's cooked all kinds of dishes to appeal to their different tastes and digestions.
Jai Ma.
Chai Ma, Chai Guru. I just love that simplicity of him, you know.
I know, it's so simple.
So
It's
sweet.
so simple. And I love metaphor. I think metaphor, when a metaphor is really well done, it demonstrates like a level of like competency.
Yeah,
And it also just like hits you in a different part of your brain.
totally
And you're like,
does.
oh, I get that. And so I'm so about metaphor.
It's how the greats get it across
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, I can't really. What did Rumi say? I sell mirrors in the marketplace of the blind. You know, and it's like they're always messing around with the imagery. You know?
Yeah.
We're doing our best here.
It does something. It really hits you in a different place. So
Yeah,
it's memorable.
sure.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. I'm just a question that I always ask at the end is like, in telling your story today or talking today, is there anything like new that you kind of felt about yourself or something came up that you haven't thought about before?
Like today,
Yeah.
I really like I really like uh, speaking with you and brothers and sisters like you on your level because it helps me refine what I'm trying to get across and it helps me come to new discoveries and kind of new ways to make this accessible. You know, I think it's like you said, it's hard sometimes to get across. Like if I was to categorize myself as a nonfiction spiritual writer, you know, and it's like that's can be dry, you know, that can be a stale religious talk sometimes. So it's like, how can I these conversations are really useful for me too to see like what how can we frame these kinds of ideas in ways that are helpful for other people, you know, or
Beautiful.
myself. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Is
you,
there anything
buddy.
you want to shamelessly plug before we go?
Um, your own beauty,
Stop.
everyone's inherent divinity. I'd like to promote the fact that you're a fractal of the infinite current from which all things come forth. And my podcast is pretty good.
Are you gonna put out new episodes or are you just like stop?
Uh,
What's going on?
yeah, I am. But I think I'm gonna pause on new recordings. I have about 5 or 6 episodes, and then I'll pause for a little bit, do a season 2, and you'll have to come home because we didn't get your story.
Yeah, I'd love
All
it.
I know is you're Naropa and not Christian, and sit with the guru. So I need to Larry King you.
I would love it. I accept that
Please.
invitation in advance.
Awesome. I'm
Cool.
excited.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks so much
Great.
for being here, and we'll
Thank
talk
you.
again soon.
We'll be in touch. All right. Bye, Hannah.
All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. The information for the guest that I had on is down in the description. And if you loved this episode or have loved any episodes of Grace Pilled, could you share with a friend? That is the freest way to support me in this work. If you really love what I'm doing, just share it with a friend. That is the most phenomenal thing you could do for me. The second most phenomenal thing you could do for me is join our course, Run Towards the Hard Shit. That's starting June 4th. There's still time to sign up. We're going to go through 4 stages of understanding conflict over the course of 4 sessions. Understanding yourself, your role, your conflict history, understanding the person you are in conflict with, understanding what happens in the actual conversation of the conflict, and then finally, what happens afterwards? How do we tend to a conflict after a discussion is over? Is it just a one discussion situation? And when is it not worth it to resolve conflict with people? So if you want to get better at doing conflict with people, which to me is the cutting edge of human evolution, you can join us for class. We start June 4th. And then other than that, you can catch me on my website, hannawilliams.com. You can check out my Patreon, which is my giant library of talks and courses that I've given over the years. And I guess if you're not interested in any of that, I'll see you next time.